Hey, Michelle, welcome to the show. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. So, Michelle Dotson, I am currently running global enablement at Zoom, but I didn't always start in sales enablement. I am from the Bay Area. I love all things Bay Area, but originally from Chicago. So you'll hear a little bit of a weird accent. English is my third language. I'm originally from Chicago and I'm in the Bay Area. So sometimes I just say extremely random things.
Well, welcome to the U.S.
Thank you so much.
Now, Zoom, what do they do again?
I don't know if you've heard of them. They're just this wonderful, quaint little company.
Yeah.
But honestly, Brian, I started a week before the global pandemic, and they weren't a household name. And so I guess it's a blessing, right? You end up where you're supposed to be. I truly believe that. And I ended up at Zoom a week before COVID was even a thing. So overnight, you all know Zoom, but when I started a year ago, it was not the case.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've known Eric for probably 3 years, and I was spreading the word back then. And that's it. It was exactly that. It went from, people in the tech space knew of it, but then
Right.
everyone knew of it.
Exactly.
And then everybody started
Grandmas.
whining about it.
Right. So we went from a primarily, corporate technology to your grandmother, your children, your mailman, you name it, is on Zoom overnight. So there obviously comes a lot of complaints with something you don't know how to use overnight.
Yeah. And how did that impact you? Because you had to ramp fast, and then you probably had to ramp the team fast.
Yeah, so I don't think that I was allowed a ramp. I think it was Michelle. Here's your desk. You'll never see it again. Go home. And now train. At the time we had, I was responsible for onboarding and learning of our entire revenue org. So um, train these people, but now we're going to add hundreds of new people every month. So for me personally, it was the hardest new job I've ever had. Um, I come from cybersecurity and data security, so those are far more complex industries and tools. And that ramp is hard. This was worse because I had to learn everything on my own during a quarantine. You don't know what's happening outside, and I don't know how to help anybody else. So, um, luckily, we have an amazing team, and I had the Zoom leadership's team's trust, I think, to figure it out. So we were able to do some really cool stuff when we had to go home.
Yeah. And who did you report into?
So I report into Hillary Headley. She is our head of sales operations and enablement, and
Okay.
she reports into our chief revenue officer, Ryan Azus.
Okay. So it went from probably a fast growing company to a hyper fast growing company. Huh?
We don't even call it fast because I don't think it can be confined within that word. What we've seen is not fast. It is unreal. It's never happened to anybody else. We don't know, right? Like that. With that comes a lot of people trying to figure out like what is happening every single day and
Yeah.
how do you communicate every single day. So it's not even fast. It's like when you break the sound barrier type speed. I think that's where we are.
Yeah. And how did you adapt to that?
You got to be creative. So I joined Zoom because I was tired of doing the same thing with the same profile salesperson. They primarily look like you, Brian. I love you. You're the person that I my my primary audience for the last 15 years, but I was ready for
Young,
something fun.
charming, enchanting.
Exactly. That is exactly the kind of person that I love to help do their job. So I came to Zoom knowing I had this opportunity to do something maybe a little different. And how we adapted is that we kind of threw everything out the window. It wasn't going to work. We didn't have the time. And we had to scale instantly and literally figure it out as we go. And so a lot of the programs that we delivered, I think, are not traditional. traditionally wouldn't have been accepted or approved at any other time. So the really, I think the adaptation was to being creative and modern and just trying things out as we go.
Yeah. And what worked? Was it short, kind of periodic enablement?
It's a mix. So I think there's a couple things that I like to do with our sellers and our revenue org. Um, when they need detail, spend the time, but customize it. So
Yeah.
if I'm teaching something new for the first time, you better believe I've spent the time to do the homework. Do I get it? Does it make sense? Will my sellers get it? Will they get it if they're in Japan? Will they get it if they're an enterprise versus a small SMB segment? So the training on something complex and difficult should be um, thorough, and you should take your time to ensure people digest and can adopt it in the field. The second thing I think is just reinforcement. So how do I get the managers to help me? I am one. I have a team today of 22, but when I
Wow.
started, there were 7 of us. So how were us 7 supposed to train all of these people, all of these new people? We had to really work with our managers to make sure they could help us train their sellers. Um, and then the last thing is we make it fun. I think in a different life, I would have been a stand-up comedian, and I try to bring fun to learning because you might not remember exactly what I told you to do, but you might laugh at a joke that is going to land terribly. And then you might pay attention a little bit more and you might get it. So we try to have some fun to make sure our sellers are paying attention and getting it too.
And what was the hiring rate when you first started, like per month or per week?
Crazy. So we have brought on. I don't have like the official numbers, but I can tell you in less than 10 months, probably 1,000 people went through our onboarding program.
Wow.
And that's not across the entire company. We just take sellers and like customer facing roles. So we onboarded, overnight virtually a mid-sized company of just new people, and it was it was insane. So
And plus, you're building your team at the same time, right?
half my job was enablement and programs and strategy, and my other half of my job was hiring. And I actually just looked back at this. I did about 200 interviews in the last 10 months,
Wow.
and I learned so much just about the interview process and people and what people are looking for, what we're looking for. But that was a heavy part of my role here at Zoom.
And what does make a great enablement person?
Um, I'm all about not having the traditional players on my team. So I love creative people. I love people who think outside the box, who tell me, Michelle, I'm going to break the box. Um, I really love people who can. I think enablement sometimes is almost like poetry, where we're translating something
Yeah.
and trying to interpret any way somebody else can interpret what we're
Yeah.
teaching them. And so I look for people who truly love technology, learning, um, who can be creative, who can take a no and turn it into something beautiful. And so some of the people on my team, first time in enablement, but I needed a different skill set to get us to where we need to go.
Okay. No enablement background, but how about sales? Was
Yeah,
that a,
I think sales background is great. I started selling cars. That's how I paid for college. And I had to learn on that lot 18 years ago old, this is like 20 years ago, how how to manage a million different things. And I knew nothing about cars. Now, does selling a car help me sell Zoom? I think it does.
sure.
But I can relate to all the training I had to sit through and all the, forecasts I had to give to my manager. And so I had a bunch of sales positions themselves. And I think my team as well has a sales background. It helps us. Is this going to land? Are they going to be bored? At what minute did you check out personally before we even release it to the team? So it's just really helpful in gauging what will be good.
Because in a lot of ways, you are a content producer. whether it's live or recorded.
Live recorded, whether it's a PDF, it's a deck, it's a training. We create so many different assets, and then we're delivering assets, and then we're creating process and strategy. And so we have to understand what our audience does in their lives day to day, how they do it, where we want them to get better, what's working, what's not working. So we are creating so many different types of documents.
And do you, sounds like you try and put a good mix of entertainment and information in there.
I think you have to.
Yeah,
I
I think
think
you're
that
right.
especially today, um, we are home, we are distracted, we have kids running around behind us, we have the weight of the world on our shoulders, and if it's not fun, I personally I have a hard time engaging. I have a hard time sitting through it. And I'm not saying everything has to be fun. Like a compliance training where like you
Right,
have
that
to
can't be
check all the,
funny.
but you can throw a gif in there, right? Like you can get people to know like I know you don't want to do this, but we made it as easy as possible and we'll get you through it in 7 minutes versus the 40 maybe that you're used to. And so there are ways to still make very complicated things fun.
And I think that is the magic,
Yeah,
because is if you can get either people to laugh or
right,
engage
right.
in some way, because the days of the Ben Stein presentations aren't, just don't fly anymore.
So selling has changed, buying has changed, learning has changed forever. We were already making a shift, but we are in a new world today. And so the longer companies and people take to adapt to this new world, the longer you're going to be kind of facing those old school ways of doing things. Um, so it some people don't like it. I'm not gonna lie to you. I get a lot of like, I didn't like your song. I don't like Drake. Where are the Eagles? Right? You got to balance it. And so we try to accommodate a global audience. We try to accommodate every group we can. But as a whole, as a company, they're allowing this shift, which makes it really fun.
And do you own, like, is there a boot camp for like new people? Is it the
So
traditional?
yeah, we have a base camp, and it is a camping theme. My team is responsible. I'm very indoorsy. I like have never been in a tent in my life. So they have designed an amazing base camp, and we've changed how we onboard at Zoom. It is no longer just a replica of the week long in person, 8 hours a day, go drink afterwards and like be
Forget
miserable
everything you learned.
yeah, forget everything you learned, maybe make a friend. We've changed it. And so learning is really about give me an hour of your time over a couple of weeks. I'm going to give you some homework. You're going to go home. You're going to try it out. You're going to come back and you're going to show me what you learn. And so I think, so we have this for new people. And then we have a bunch of programs where we are constantly reinforcing, retraining our sellers that have been here, longer than the new people.
And what's the hardest part? Because the product relatively in the technology space is pretty easy, as opposed to cybersecurity, which,
I agree.
yeah,
I think the hardest part is it's funny because it's a blessing that everyone knows what Zoom does, but they think that Zoom is only this,
that right.
that it is a meeting. And so Zoom is a traditional and true UCAS solution.
Yeah.
So do they know about Zoom phone? Do they know about Zoom chat? Do they know about webinar? Do they know about how they're going to return to work and use Zoom rooms? So really, um, just sharing that yes, overnight use case was meetings, but that we can do a lot more. So I think the hardest part is um, just the rebranding, that we are more than just meetings, and then having our sellers be able to articulate that and really just share the value of everything Zoom does.
Yeah. Because I've talked with people, reps that work there, listen to the podcast, and it was like, how do I upsell? Because, a lot of people are happy with just this,
Right.
but there is so much. You can record the call, translate the call, have webinars, registrations. all of
There's so
this.
much. My own husband has his own business, and he was using a competitor, and so I basically said, it's me or the competitor. You're going to have to go to Zoom. But
So
he
what did he
had to
switch to?
so so luckily he went to Zoom. But I had to have him go through his own process, right? He
Yeah.
had to learn. He had to see
Right.
what do we offer. And so Zoom phone was important for him. Zoom room was important for him. Zoom chat, Zoom meetings. But he didn't know and I worked there. And so it for me it was very eye opening of from a business side, right? I tried to stay out of it as much as I could. It was really hard for me, but I wanted to see how do we sell Zoom? How do we position Zoom? I wanted to see from his side, what do you know about Zoom? Especially when you're in quarantine with your wife who's talking about it all day. If he doesn't know about it, I can't expect others to as well.
Right.
So it was an eye opening experience, obviously, for me, but it helps me then to ensure our reps are trained and able to have those conversations about what more we offer.
And how did you get them to embrace that? Because it's easy to fall back and kind of the response reactive sales approach. You got a great customer base. Hey, would you like to learn about this? No? Okay, bye. No.
So sellers are obviously driven by um, incentives, and I think that we've done some great things around. If you were to expand your Zoom offering, and if you can sell more of different products, we have some amazing contests that happen at Zoom.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like life changing, amazing contests, right? So it's hard to incentivize people who are also doing really well. And so for me, being in sales, I'm competitive. So if money isn't going to incentivize you and you've already made millions of dollars, you probably still have that hunger deep down inside to be number one. And so there's a lot of competitive nature that we try to instill at Zoom. And we share examples. So they don't want to hear it from me about what they need to do. They want to hear it from their peer. They want to hear it from somebody who maybe just got that life changing prize about why it's important. So we do a lot of like self promotion from within the sellers themselves.
Yeah. And how about as far as working with the sales leaders? Because there's a competition for time and attention and prioritization.
So enablement as a whole, how do I do that? I
Yeah.
for I force it. So I came in and month one, I'm like, here's my 50-page plan. Here's my monthly cadence with you. Whether you like it or not, you will hear what I do, what my team does, and where we're making an impact. And I want to hear from you what's working and what's not working. Now, did I came in hot, right? I came in with a plan. I said, these are my goals. I will do this for you, but you are my partner. And so I think for me personally, I have a great relationship with our sales leaders. My team has a great relationship with sales leaders, and it goes all the way down to the frontline managers. But we make time and we will force our way into their face to say, we want this to be collaborative. I don't want it to be, I'm not an order taker and I'm not going to push training that you don't believe in. So how do we come together and collaborate on what your teams need?
And what do they express their need to be before it turns into a problem?
So a lot of the times, I don't think that our leaders or sellers really know the problem. So they'll tell me or they'll tell the team, Michelle, that this we I was on a call and this is what happened. So I need to train everybody on negotiating on
Yeah.
at the C level, right? And so for me and my team, we do our own discovery, just like salespeople. We now have to do an intake. Can you tell me about that person? How long have they been here? What is their win rate? Do they ask good questions? Did we do a discovery? What did they ask during the discovery? Um, I have to really come to the part where we find the root cause of the problem that they think they have.
Yeah.
And so what I share with my leaders all the time is tell me the problem, but let me and the team come with a solution. And so a lot of the time, We come with something different, but it's really around figuring out what is the that root cause of what they're seeing in a deal or in the field.
And have you found a consistent pattern as far as
So I hate to be so vague, but like it has been so wild here for the last year that I don't know that there is a pattern. Now, what I can tell you is what I personally and the team is shifting a focus on is we are going to help prepare our sellers for whatever comes next. And so that is our focus. And so to prepare somebody, you got to start from our BDRs and asking great questions. You got to start from how do I present virtually really well? You got to start with how do I have difficult conversations and handle objections now virtually in a new world. We're redefining a lot of our basics and we are preparing people for what may come next. And
yeah.
so that is the focus, the shift that we kind of made this year.
And how long did it take you to kind of feel like you had your feet underneath you, where you weren't constantly toppled over every morning?
Uh, I don't know that I still have my feet under me,
Yeah,
but I think that, I think there was a definitely a point for me about a couple months in, um, where okay, we made onboarding virtual. We have to plan a virtual SCO. I think I was here 3 months before we had to do our first ever virtual SCO, and there was a point where I just felt like not only do I know what I'm talking about, but I know where I'm trying to get everyone to go. And once I felt confident in that, it was a lot of just pieces coming into place and everybody aligning and working really well together. But I think it took me about a couple months to feel just a little bit more confident in what I was doing.
yeah. And what makes a great enablement leader, in your opinion?
Um, I think you have to be honest with yourself and you have to be really honest with what people expect and want from you. And I am not selling Zoom every day. I'm not telling you how to do your job the best. I don't know what makes you you and what you need to say to close a deal. And my livelihood does not depend on your quota the way yours does. So for me to be honest is getting feedback, and sometimes the feedback is maybe not what I want to hear. It's not what I thought the program was going to be. And then shifting, changing, being okay with that, and modifying what we're doing. So I think honesty, transparency, just a willingness to shift, and to be able to just make some hard calls. I think any leader needs that, but I think in a support role to sellers, you have to just be honest with yourself.
And how do you tell if you're being successful or not?
The biggest compliment, I got a bunch of compliments when I started at Zoom, like Michelle, this is amazing. We've never seen this. Thank you so much. We've been waiting for this. That was great. The best compliment that I got was actually from our Sean Rowlands, our head of solution engineering. And he said, I see a difference in the calls with our sellers.
Yeah,
And it was in one of those forced monthly meetings that I make him go to because I want to know what's working and not working. And it was just a comment that came out of his mouth, and I don't even know if he'll remember it, but to me, that was validation. If a SE leader sees a shift in our sellers and they are more confident and competent, and he associates that with our enablement team, I've done my job, and that's success.
and how were you able to do that when salespeople, because they don't report to you, right?
No.
And yeah, so you have to persuade them, entice them to
Well, Brian, I tell them I'm their best friend. So I'm not here to tell you what to do. Like I mentioned, I'm not here to tell you how to do it, when to do it. You figure that out with your manager. But if you want advice, you want to know where to find something, you want an example, you want a process, you come to me. And so I've actually had some really some sellers just like open up to me. Michelle, I'm struggling. I need help. We don't have this. Can you help us? So to me, that's the relationship that I want myself and my team to have with sellers
Yeah.
versus we know everything, we're
Right.
the best, and you got to do what we tell you because that's not going to work. So I'm there. I introduce myself all the time in our large trainings. Michelle Dotson, I am your trusty enablement best friend. So that is just what I call myself.
And how can you do that at scale without them you just being their curator? Like, hey, Michelle, I'm having this problem. Where do I go?
Right. So I think it's a mix of allowing them to find content when they need it, uh, and in their deals, in their conversations. I think it's a mix of creating a safe space for them to practice.
Yeah.
So tools and talk tracks and exercises where they get to practice before they get to customers. So they're going to ask me or the team before they get to those difficult conversations. And it's just a mix of constantly getting them the information they need and communicating in a controlled fashion. So they're not always coming to me directly. They know where to go to look for things and who can help them.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, this has been a fun conversation, Michelle. I appreciate your time. Where can
Of
people
course.
go to connect and follow you?
LinkedIn, Michelle Afshar Dotson. And thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.